I'm going to let you in on a little secret and something you might not want to hear. There is a very fine line between affirming yourself and completely avoiding your truth. And most of us don't even realize once we've crossed that line. And that is what we're talking about today. Welcome back, everyone, to the Thrive Club Co podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Jade, and we are diving in today, episode 46 Affirmations versus Gaslighting. So, this was a really unique one. This was a request made by someone in the community, in the club, and wanted to know, well, what's the difference really between affirmations and just gaslighting yourself? And it took me a second to register this request for an episode on what the difference is. And I thought, you know what? That is such a good point because there's a lot of times we don't realize where that line is and how a lot of us can feel about affirmations and how it can be a very diluted word in the wellness industry and within our lives. It raises the question of how far is too far if you're telling yourself all things that are good, but you're actually lying to yourself at the same time and it doesn't sit right. Excellent question, and really happy to have had a request for an episode. And we're going to dive in straight away with just simply defining what those terms mean. So, if we're going to define what the word affirmation actually means in the dictionary, it means the action or process of affirming or to be affirmed. Not super clear. It also means emotional support or encouragement. And to bridge that gap a little closer together, the definition of affirm itself means to state as a fact, to assert it strongly publicly. Now let's look at the definition of gaslighting. The definition of gaslighting is the practice of psychologically manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. So just at face value alone, the definitions vary drastically. But when you use it as a verb, as an action, this is where it can get tricky because there is a fine line between gaslighting is typically done upon someone else. There is an external gaslighter. Typically, it takes two. What if you can gaslight your own self? That is a possibility because I think we've all been there, right? When you look in the mirror or you say out loud things like, I am confident, I am strong, I love myself. There can be this little tiny voice in your head giving you this bodily reaction and your mind thinking, I don't really believe that, or that's not fully true. And then you're left wondering if affirmations are supposed to be helpful, why am I left feeling worse? And the answer is that it's not because affirmations don't work, is that they only work when they meet us where we actually are right now in life and not ignoring our reality. When I first started using affirmations many years ago, I'll be honest, it felt so forced. I was this positive person on the outside, but the inside of me felt different. I really didn't feel positive on the inside, but there was this stigma around me that I was this positive person when sometimes I felt the exact opposite on the inside. So when using certain affirmations, I believe them, I believe them, I believe them and say them. But there was a small voice in my head that thought this doesn't line up with what's going on in life right now. This is kind of denying my reality right now. I don't really believe this, especially when it came to just saying that I love myself or I'm confident. I didn't really love myself though at that point in time, and I didn't feel confident in my own skin, let alone comfortable. And what I realized years down the road that something interesting was happening. I was trying to speak this new existence into my reality without acknowledging what I was actually feeling first. I didn't give myself permission to feel through what I was actually experiencing and feeling, and instead just creating a new reality on a very hollow foundation. So instead of rewiring my brain, what I was actually doing was I was overriding my truth. And I kind of tricked myself into believing that they were working, they were working, they were working. But came a day and a point in time where I realized this isn't really working for me because I'm not acknowledging anything else that I'm experiencing in life. And it wasn't until actually taking different actions And particularly when I went back to therapy and had aligned actions, then it registered with who I was starting to become and actually did start to align with the words that I had been saying. And that's because actions and words are louder together. And then it clicked. It was because these words were not connected to my reality and how I saw reality at that time. It was then when I learned that affirmations were not about pretending that everything is fine and everything's okay and to ignore everything else, just keep thinking positive, positive going forward in this thought process while ignoring everything else. They're about telling yourself the truth, taking accountability while you're opening the door to something brand new. When you think of something like, I'm fearless, learning that there is a difference between I'm fearless and I'm choosing to move through fear, that even when fear shows up, I can move through it. That's the difference, and that's the shift that changed everything for me on the topic. And there's actually a brain reason why forced affirmations don't really work to our benefit always, and it's called cognitive dissonance. To simplify it, that's when your brain hears something that it doesn't really believe and immediately creates resistance. It's like if someone told you can be an ultra marathon runner starting tomorrow and win your first race. That'd be pretty dope and pretty cool. But if you've never trained or never even ran, your brain automatically says, no way. So that's the same kind of thing that happens when you tell yourself something that feels emotionally miles away from where you're actually at right now. And that's because our brain's job, it's to protect us, truly. It's to protect us from what feels safe versus unsafe. So when you're saying an affirmation that your brain just is not really aligning with yet, your amygdala, the fear response in our brain, it starts to go off and say, no, no, this isn't right. And it flares up, signaling discomfort. But here is the empowering part. And it doesn't mean the affirmations don't work. It means that your brain needs bridges and not leaps. So when we use language that acknowledges the truth and adds a gentle direction forward, it activates our prefrontal cortex. And simply put, that's the part of our brain responsible for reasoning, self-awareness, emotional regulation, right? And that is where neuroplasticity starts to happen. Those small repeated moments of alignment begin rewiring your neural pathways. So instead of faking it till you make it, you're building it until you believe it. And for your practice, the challenge, the rewire, here's how I approach affirmations now. I call it the Daily Rewire Method. We start with step one, and that is to acknowledge. Acknowledge the truth of where you're at. For example, maybe you feel anxious talking in front of large groups of people. Now, step two is the rewire, where we add a new supportive belief. And to base it off of your truth, that new belief could look something like, I'm believing that my voice matters too. So when we put that together, we can acknowledge that I can move through my fear of speaking in front of people because I'm learning that my voice matters too. And it can also look like I'm learning that my voice matters and I release social speaking anxiety. You're not denying the truth of how you feel, but you're approaching it in a whole new perspective that takes the form and the shape of the new wiring happening in your brain. And when you do this on a consistent day-to-day basis, that is when you see the most rapid progress happening over time for lasting change. This combination tells your brain that this is real, but it's safe to change as well. And another example of if it doesn't sit right with you, saying, I am confident, try another one out for size and say, I'm building confidence with every step I take. Instead of, I love my body right now, if it doesn't feel true to you, I'm learning to respect my body for what it carries me through. You see how those variations create space for growth rather than denial? That is key. Because when affirmations meet honesty, they create safety for us. And that is the foundation of rewiring itself. Because that really, truly, that's when the brain stops fighting the resistance against it. And when the brain starts to actually believe what you're saying is true because it feels safe and it starts to believe it. And if you want to take this a little bit deeper, I challenge you today, this week, for 2 journal prompts, either written in your journal, in your notes on your phone, or said out loud. Ask yourself first, what is a truth that I've been avoiding, but I'm ready to acknowledge? And number 2, what belief am I ready to start building instead? You'll be pretty surprised to see how freeing it is feeling your emotions, being validated by yourself, and then challenging, empowering yourself with a new set of a belief system. So, the biggest lesson I've learned through this and a huge takeaway today, it's that affirmations are not about forced positivity. Instead, they are about creating possibility for yourself. Because when we speak truth to ourselves, our words stop feeling just like scripts and they start feeling actually like anchors for ourselves to carry through with us. So, if you've ever felt that affirmations just don't work for you, try it this way. Try the Daily Rewire Method. Maybe it's just that you are trying to leap too far too fast instead of bridging the gap of where you're at now and where you want to actively be. Try building smaller bridges. Give yourself language that feels like hope and not a performance, because your brain does not need perfection to change. Far from it, actually. It needs repetition, it needs honesty, it needs safety, and it needs consistency. So you don't have to fake confidence to find it. You have to instead speak to yourself like you're someone that you're learning to trust now. And now I want to thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Thrive Club Co podcast, for being a part of the club, for being a part of the community. If you're not already, make sure that you are subscribed. Leave a comment or questions or a request for a future episode below in the comments. I'm your host, Jordan, and I'll catch you in the next one.